What is going on, guys? I'm Pete, and welcome to Retro Game Attic. This is my copy of Nintendo Power Volume 175 from January 2004. I've recently been going through my old video game magazines from back in the day, and I didn't really have too many memories with this one. I haven't cracked it open in about 20 years, so I figured why not make a video and film my reactions for you guys. So with all that out of the way, let's crack it open. This is volume 175 from January 2004. At the time I was a subscriber, but I honestly don't even remember browsing through this issue, so it'll be cool to actually check it out for once. So you can see that the main game featured on the cover is Mario Kart Double Dash. I know that game was a huge deal back when it was released, and it really doesn't get too much love today. You can see a little nod to Sonic over here. I think that is the Sonic Heroes design. Don't quote me on that. You can see in the top left-hand corner we have GameCube and Game Boy Advance. Those are the two systems that we're still covering. Those are the ones that were supported at the time. Lord of the Rings Return of the King, Beyond Good and Evil, and I believe this is a Secret of Mana game, whatever sequel it was for the Game Boy Advance. And in the bottom right hand corner here we have 1080 Avalanche, Mario Party 5, and Dragon Ball Z Budokai. So we'll flip the cover here, and we are greeted by two ads, one for Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. I know this was pretty sought after when it came out as well. I don't know too much about Final Fantasy. I played 1 through 3 in North America, and I kind of called it quits after that. Then we have an ad for subscription to Nintendo Power. Now, I took advantage of this pretty much every time I renewed back in the day, and I would get a free strategy guide, so it was a good incentive. So yeah, you can sign up and mail this in for only $19.95 US, and I believe the strategy guides were only around that price back then, so it kind of paid for itself. It really did make sense. And then a little artwork from Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. Pretty cool. And here we go. This game was pushed a lot back in the day, and I know it was from Yuji Naka, and you can see in the top left-hand corner from the creator of Sonic the Hedgehog. I only played this on the GameCube demo disc. I believe it was released around summer 2003 or maybe summer 2004. Don't quote me on that, but I do remember having a good time with it, and I never ended up picking it up, which is unfortunate because it was pretty fun. It was a pretty unique 3D platformer. I haven't looked up prices for this one recently, but I'm sure it's expensive. And then here we have our contents. Like I said before, Double Dash, Kirby Air Ride, Mario Party 5, Beyond Good and Evil. Yeah, there's definitely some heavy hitters in here. And that Double Dash artwork is awesome. And then an ad for the 10th anniversary of Magic the Gathering. Now this is another thing I know nothing about. I know it's a card game and I know people love it. I just personally never got into it, but I do respect it though. It seems like it's pretty cool. Just not really my thing. And then information about the publication itself, all the departments, Beyond Good and Evil. I believe this is the Lord of the Rings game. It looks like it's a Game Boy Advance game. And then Ozzy and Drix. Now I think this is from Osmosis Jones, that movie. It was like an early 2000s comedy. I really don't know much about it. I think it was a Chris Rock film. I've never even heard of this game. It's made by Midway. It's probably competent enough, but it seems like it's probably some sort of kid shovelware game. And here is Player's Pulse. Now this is a familiar site to anybody that's subscribed to Nintendo Power. So this is where readers write in, and then Nintendo Power publishes their little stories or their artwork, as you can see. Here's an ice climber. Looks like a Mario, Link, Golden Sun, Beautiful Joe. That looks like Zelda. And then PN03. Pretty cool. Some more artwork up here. Nice. Looks like an ad for a Harry Potter game. I know nothing about Harry Potter. I've never seen any of the movies. Actually, that's not true. I've seen one of them. They were like a little bit older. I don't know. Not a Harry Potter guy. But here's some of the artwork that was submitted. Now, these actually all look pretty good. Especially this Wind Waker artwork here. That's pretty awesome. Link, then Fire Emblem artwork of Marth and Roy. So here's the rest of that Harry Potter ad. Quidditch World Cup, an EA game. Pretty cool that it features GameCube to Game Boy Advance connectability. They were really pushing that back in the day. So here are the top selling games for GameCube. And top position is Soul Calibur 2. Now that's pretty cool. I remember it being a cross-platform game back in the day, but Link was exclusive to GameCube, so that was reason enough for many people to pick it up. WrestleMania, F-Zero, Simpsons Hit and Run, Sonic Adventure DX, so Billy Hatcher, Wario World, Star Fox Adventures. Now these are all just classics. It's crazy that I don't even think this is that old, but these games are seriously heavy hitters, and most of them have aged pretty well. And then here's the player's choice chart. Most of these I'm pretty familiar with. I don't really know Freedom Fighters. I probably should. Beautiful Joe is an awesome game. I have the first one and the second. I don't think I have the third one. Here's an ad for some Disney Game Boy Advance games. Nothing too interesting here. Maybe Lion King 1.5. I know the classic 16-bit games are pretty cool. I don't know anything about this Game Boy Advance one, but maybe I'll check it out. Here's a Walmart ad for a GameCube. It's just a dude climbing on the side of a giant GameCube. I mean, whatever floats your boat, I guess. And then here are the Game Boy charts here. I assume it's Game Boy Advance, which yes, it is Game Boy Advance. It's weird that they just say it's Game Boy, even though it is backwards compatible, but I guess I would probably make the distinction, but let's check out some of the games here. So Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, we saw an ad for that earlier. Some Pokemon games, Ruby and Sapphire, Donkey Kong Country. Sonic Advance 2 is a sleeper game. That one is seriously good. I think that was developed by Dims, if I'm not mistaken. And then here's the Player's Choice, Mario and Luigi. We saw an ad for that earlier. Shining Soul, WarioWare is a sick game. James Bond 007, Everything or Nothing. I don't remember that one. Sonic Pinball Party, now that's another awesome one too. It features a lot of Sega characters, I think Knights, and I think some of the Monkey Ball characters, if I'm not mistaken. I do have that one. I haven't played it in like 20 years though. And then here's the rest of that Walmart ad. This was back when the GameCube was $99.99, and that was like a screaming deal even back then. The Platinum Wavebird and the Game Boy Player. Now I remember this being $50 at MSRP back then, and that was such a deal. I bought mine new. I actually bought one for my friend. This was like the go-to accessory for the GameCube. So there's some Game Watch, some Spotlight games here, and unfortunately I don't remember a lot of these. I wasn't really paying attention to a lot of non-Nintendo or non-Sega games, and I was pretty close-minded, so it would be fun to actually revisit some of these and see if any are pretty good. Crash Nitro Kart, that one actually looks pretty decent. I remember the original one, Crash Team Racing, I believe it was, on PlayStation. The Sims, Wade Hickston's Counter Punch. Now that's kind of reminiscent of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out or Power Punch 2. It even says it, comic boxing along the lines of the classic Punch-Out game. That one looks pretty cool. Maybe I'll look that one up. And I remember this too, the Pac-Man Versus game. I think this came bundled with Pac-Man World 2. This was a pretty fun game that you can connect to your Game Boy Advance to, where you're controlling Pac-Man and then the other players connected to the GameCube are controlling the ghost to get you. This one's seriously fun. The Max Payne game. Little tidbit about the Wavebird going platinum. I know the original release was just gray. That's the one that I bought new. Bomberman game. Samurai Surprise. Samurai Jack. Something I know a little bit about. I know people do love it. This might be a cool one to check out. And then a port of the 16-bit Aladdin to the GBA. Didn't even know that was a thing. Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy. Looks like a little 3D platformer. A racing game with real cars. Looks like an Acura RSX and a Toyota MR2. This was like at the height of the tuner culture in the early 2000s. Disney's Hide and Sneak. It's developed by Capcom, which is pretty cool. It's an action puzzle game. That's another one I might check out. Sims game. And then this Wade Hickston one. I've never even heard of it. Developed by DSI Games. It actually looks pretty cool. I kind of like that comic-y art style. Project Digipen. Never heard of that one. Looks like an RPG, an adventure RPG. Mario Golf for GBA. That one's a good one. Activision Anthology. Yeah, CT Special Forces. This looks like a 2D kind of shooter game in the vein of like Metal Slug or Contra. It even says that Contra fans won't want to miss the action. That's another one I'll probably have to check out. Here's a little article here about the guy who does the voice, or one of the guys who does a voice on Dragon Ball Z. That screenshot up there is pretty rough, even for the time period. I figured by like the early to mid 2000s, screenshots like that weren't a thing. They actually had better ways of capturing it. Here's a little forecast of upcoming games. And this one's cool, and as you can see, I didn't even touch it. It's a Fire Emblem sticker. I wonder how rare this is. I wonder how many kids or whatever adults just stuck this thing around. That is pretty cool. And this is a great game. This is actually the only Fire Emblem game I own in the series, and I had a lot of fun with it. Here's an ad for Disney's Haunted Mansion. It looks like a cross-platform game. Never heard of that one. Oh yeah, this was a big deal back in the day too, the promo Zelda disc. There was a Master Quest disc and this one, which included all the original games. Ocarina, Majora's Mask. I remember a lot of my friends picking up the GameCube around that time. They were kind of holdouts, and this definitely sold a lot of people on it back then. Here's a Neopets card game by Wizards of the Coast. Those are the Magic the Gathering people, I believe. Here's some stuff about Nintendo Online, I guess like the online arm of the publication. There's some activities and things you can do in there. Stuff I never really participated in back then. You can kind of vote for your favorite characters or whatever it is. That's pretty cool. And here is the Double Dash coverage. Look how colorful and vibrant. Like the layouts on these old school Nintendo Powers were just like top tier. Tire tracks and just like the way that everything flowed. It's just a masterclass in like magazine layout. Goes over the battle modes, items, special items, kart drivers, training, visualizations of the tracks and secret pathways and stuff like that. This is what you subscribed to Nintendo Power for back in the day. Pretty cool. It's actually awesome seeing pictures of these. Double Dragon Advance, another one that I didn't even know. And River City Ransom. These are like two classic beat-em-ups made by Atlas too. Either this game is worth nothing or it's worth like a ton of money today. I'd be interested to see. Looks like an anime game. Really don't know anything about this one. It's telling you to pre-order order it. Man, I have a lot of homework to do. Here's the cover of 1080 Avalanche. I did have this one back in the day. It wasn't as fun as the original. It definitely had like similar controls and everything, but I don't know, there was just something about it. It lacked like the attitude, like the 90s attitude of the original. It's pretty cool seeing all the different boards and everything laid out. The GameCube board, Ricky Winterborn, Ghetto Yeti. Don't get me wrong, it was still packed with like that 90s tude, but it was definitely shaded more into like the 2000s. It was like a little subdued. I don't know, it's hard to explain. And look at that, 1080 Avalanche ski cap. Here's a Brother Bear game for Game Boy Advance, and it looks like PC. Okay, I was right. It was Sonic Heroes. I remember this game coming out around that time. I didn't have the GameCube version. I think I had it on PS2. I'm definitely showing my age here. I really do prefer the 2D Sonic games over the 3D. Not saying that they're bad or anything. I just was raised on the 2D ones, and I don't know. There's just something about the 3D ones that never really resonated with me. Oh, look at this little fold out. Oh, that's pretty cool. All the different teams in the game. Pretty awesome. And here's an ad for Go-Go Hypergrind. I know this game is pretty sought after today, and it's pretty expensive, but I know a lot of people love that like cell shaded and cartoony kind of art style. It's made by Atlas. That's usually an indication of a kind of short, limited production run, which is why this one's probably so sought after. Kind of a bummer I didn't pick it up back then. Then here's a Looney Tunes game. Looks like it's on GameCube, PS2, and Game Boy Advance. Not on the Xbox, interestingly enough. Then here's a little spread for Kirby Air Ride. This is another super fun one, and it's kind of wild. In the year 2025 or whenever 2026, we're getting a sequel to this on Switch 2, which still blows my mind. This was like a pretty obscure game. A super fun one at that, but never in my wildest dreams did I think we'd get a sequel to it. Here's an ad for a TMNT game. So it is a cross-platform one, and I believe the Game Boy Advance one is like a 2D beat-em-up in the vein of kind of those old school ones. This is another one I never picked up, unfortunately. Prince of Persia, Sands of Time. I remember this being a big deal as well when it first came out. My friends played it, I just never got into it. Freestyle Metal X, another one I've really never heard of. Then Freaky Flyers, it gives you all the tips and tricks. Tiger Woods, PGA 04, Top Gear Rally, Haunted Mansion, we saw an ad for that earlier. Simpsons Hit and Run, I know this one is really awesome too. It's kind of like that GTA style where you drive around Springfield. Or no, I think this is the Crazy Taxi clone. Either way, I remember having a lot of fun with it. Here's that Soul Calibur 2 coverage, an ad for a Pokemon game. And look, I guess it had e-reader support. Didn't even know that. I guess maybe it came with some e-reader cards for the GBA. Here we go, an ad for Crash Nitro Kart. And look at that early 2000s kind of like tuner culture. Looks like a Honda Civic. I'm not sure what that is in the background. Pretty cool though. And they still have like that older style Crash mascot. Now obviously Crash was a PlayStation mascot, and it was around this time, and Sonic as well, going cross-platform. So it was kind of weird at the time seeing him on a Nintendo product. Here's some coverage on Mario Party 5. I remember this one being awesome. I remember 4 being good, but I remember the player movement in 5 in between turns being like really snappy and quick, and that made all the difference in these games. I remember this one being awesome. And look at that, it gives you coverage of all the mini games. Like, this was super useful back then. I'm kind of bummed I never used it. And here we go, a sticker it looks like for Mario Party 5, never used. 2 stickers, Mario for President. Pretty awesome. Here's an ad for Mega Man Battle Chip Challenge. This is at the time where I was not paying attention to Mega Man. An ad for Tony Hawk's Underground. Multi-platform on GBA as well. Powered by GameSpy and AT&T Wireless. Kind of a throwback. Beyond Good and Evil. This is another one I definitely need to check out. I should probably start taking a running list here. Look at this, a Kmart advertisement. This is awesome. The Cure for Cabin Fever. A Platinum GameCube. You have 2 Wavebirds, 2 receivers. Everything looks good there. I think Kmart is still in business. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's like 1 or 2 left. Still pretty wild just seeing an ad for it though. An ad for Beyond Good and Evil, the game that was just covered a few pages ago. Here's the Lord of the Rings game. Not really my bag, but you can see there's a ton of coverage here. I guess it goes over all the characters and levels. Well, this one's actually pretty extensive. And then here's what I was talking about earlier, the Pac-Man World 2 game that came bundled with Pac-Man Versus. For 20 bucks, you can't beat that. And Pac-Man Versus is a ton of fun. SSX 3. I don't know why I never really got into the SSX games, even though I was like a 1080 fan. I guess because I was just still such a Nintendo fanboy. Here's an order form. I guess a sweepstakes form and an order form. That's pretty cool. I forgot you used to be able to buy back issues. You can pick which issue that you missed. And then here's that entry form for the GameCube contest. Look at that, they're pushing 4-player LAN battles with 4 copies of Kirby Air Ride, 4 cubes, Platinum Wavebirds, 4 TV sets, I assume a CRT TV, 4 broadband adapters. Look at that, LAN cables. That is like such a product of its time, like a LAN party. That is crazy. And look at that shirt too. That's actually pretty cool. Here are the rapid fire previews, just little blurbs here and a short little bit of coverage. Nothing that really tickles my fancy right off the bat. True Crime Streets of LA, I remember that being a big deal. Resident Evil Code Veronica X, I think the original one was on the Dreamcast, and Code Veronica X is the port. And look, a Spawn game still getting love in November 2003. An ad for Metabots by Natsume, and an ad for 2 Harvest Moon games. You have the GameCube game and the Game Boy Advance, and it has that Game Boy Advance connectivity with the link cable. A Dragon Ball Z game, Budokai, goes over all the fighters, special features, how to battle. Here is Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. Here's an ad for another Natsume game, Sema the Enemy. Another one I've never heard of, but look at that, it was Best of E3 in 2003. Looks like an action RPG. This is one of those games that's probably really cheap or super expensive. Here's some coverage of the original Fire Emblem. Like I said before, this game rules. I wish I actually looked at this back in the day because I'm not an RPG guy and I had a little bit of trouble with that one. An ad for a Batman game by Ubisoft, cross-platform. Look at that, some Animal Crossing stuff here. Some photos of, I guess, people's towns that readers sent in. It'll tell you where to send your mail and photos to. Here's a little pattern that you can use, a code that you can use in the game. That's pretty cool. An ad for a Spyro game by Digital Eclipse. Definitely not on my radar back then. Might have to check it out though. This is a game that doesn't really get a lot of love today. I remember it being so weird when it came out. I wasn't really so much of a Pokemon fan, but I remember this being like pretty unique for the time. It even has a Pokemon Mini in the game. That's crazy. And here we go. Here's an e-reader card that I never used. Never even took it off. I'm still not going to do that now. So here you go. There's the free game that you get. I guess it's a little Kirby puzzle. Cool. A little bit of Pokemon card game coverage. Sword of Mana. That was one of the games that was on the cover. Wow. There's a lot of tips on that one. An ad for Sims Busting Out, or Bustin' Out. Shining Soul 2. I guess a sequel to Shining Force, or somewhat in that series. It looks like a Shining Force game. And then here is the poster. Gonna have to move this over. I'm not gonna take it out. I'm gonna see the best way to unfold this without doing any sort of damage to it. Okay, so it looks like it's a Sword of Mana poster. Like I said, I'm not gonna unfold it. Gotta keep that baby intact. So here are the Shining Soul 2 characters. More coverage. You really needed tips like this with RPGs back in the day. Some of them were so cryptic, and especially if you were like some kid who really didn't know what they were doing, that was a lifesaver. I guess a challenge in Beautiful Joe. And you can enter the challenge and then send your entries into Nintendo Power. The Evolution of Speed. I never even heard of this one. And it's a Namco game. They definitely made good racers. Cross-platform. Pretty cool. Metal Arms. Glitch in the System. It's made by Sierra. Might actually be decent. It looks like some sort of robot fighting game. Best GameCube shooter game of E3. Man, I really needed to pay more attention back then. So here's the ratings for the games that were just released or about to release. 5 stars across the board for Double Dash. 1080 did pretty well, as well as Mario Party 5. Beyond Good and Evil rated pretty well. Same thing with Superstar Saga. Looks like all these are rated pretty well. There really wasn't a bad game in the bunch, it looks like. Yeah, most of these are rated pretty highly. Looks like Dragon Ball Z wasn't rated too high. Same thing with this Hot Wheels World Race game. Dr. Seuss doesn't look like it's too good either. Little League Baseball 2003. Yeah, this James Bond game I mentioned earlier today, I'd never even heard of it. It looks actually pretty cool. Like a 2D kind of shooter game, or maybe a 2.5D. All right, here we go. The last of the ratings. I like another mention of Game Boy Color in this issue. By 2004, this thing was pretty ancient. Who Are You? This was like the slogan that they were pushing at the time. I think there was a Who Are You Game Boy Advance SP with like a tribal design on it. That one was pretty crazy. So you have a Mario and a Luigi mustache. It looks like this one did come out. It has like the perforated edges. And then here is the 2003 Buyer's Guide. Oh, it's a fold out. So another like little poster kind of thing. I'm not going to mess around with this one. You can kind of see what's going on. Gotcha Force. That's pretty cool. Looks like just rapid fire information, easily digestible. And then here is a dead retailer. Here's a Circuit City ad for the GameCube. So they were really pushing that Platinum Cube at the time, and a bunch of games that were available for it. Nice. I always like seeing some Circuit City love out there. That store was awesome. Some contact and advertising information, and then there's that bootleg ocarina that was pushed in this magazine for so long. It's not an official Nintendo item or anything like that. It's by Songbird Ocarinas. I never knew anybody that had this thing, and they weren't even cheap, like 40 bucks, 50 bucks. That's kind of wild. 60 bucks. I'd be interested to see if anybody out there actually has one of these things. I'm sure there's like a YouTube video or something like that. The game index, and then titles currently available for Cube at the time. Definitely makes it easy that they organize them by genre. Here's an ad for iNinja by Namco and Argonaut. Now those are the guys who did the original Star Fox. I had a friend who worked at GameStop at the time. I knew nothing about this game. I never heard of it. I remember him giving me a free promo shirt and basically begging me to play it, and I never did, unfortunately. This might be one that I'll just pick up to actually give it a try. I have no idea if it's good or not. You really don't hear too many people talking about it today. And then a little preview of the next issue, more Sims content, Pac-Man Versus, and then iNinja in the next issue, so maybe I'll have to dig that one up and go through it again. And then an ad for Mucha Lucha by Ubisoft. Definitely has like that 16-bit vibe for sure. Kind of looks like that Ren and Stimpy game for NES and the one on Genesis. I don't know why, just like that art style. And we're just about done with the issue here. We have an ad for some Nintendo Power guides for some of the games that were covered in this issue. And then last page we have an ad for Jagun Fighters or Jagoon Fighters. I'm not too familiar. It must be a really early concept. I assume it's a game. Yeah, game concept by whoever that is. Never even heard of this one. And finally, on the last page, we have an ad for Beyblade V-Force. There's a GameCube game and a GBA game by Atari and D. Wrights. And then here is the spine before we finish up. So I remember in the spines of multiple issues around this time, you'd put them together and they'd form different characters. That one looks like Mario, I think Samus, and I'm not sure who this one was, but this was pretty cool. And I think Who Are You was spelled out when you lined multiple issues up together. It was actually pretty cool and it looked good on your shelf. So that was Nintendo Power Volume 175 from January 2004. There were a ton of heavy-hitting games in this issue, and I'm kind of bummed I didn't remember it from back in the day. I am happy that I was finally able to go through it with you guys, and hopefully you enjoyed it. So if you guys did enjoy this format, please be sure to let me know in the comments, because I have a ton of old school video game magazines from back in the day that I would love to go through again. So what did you guys think? Did you have this issue from back in the day? Were there any games on here that you did have or did enjoy? Or just any thoughts in general? Please be sure to let me know in the comments. I love hearing from you guys. As always, thank you all so much for checking out Retro Game Attic. I really do appreciate you all. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you on the next one.